Hey patrons and channel members, today I'm out here testing two of these Asian style hand planes that got off Temu. I saw them there fairly cheap in some ad link and I thought, why not, let's give them a go. So that's what I'm doing out here in the shed today. So what I'll do is I'll bring you in here, we'll just have a quick overview of what the hand planes are. And do note I had to actually give them a quick oil. This one in particular was quite dry. This one was sort of greasy but left a stain. I'm not sure exactly what this is, whether it's stained timber or not, but it did leave a bit of a staining on my hands. So yeah, but I thought I'd get the two different sizes. They were fairly inexpensive, so let's just go in here, we'll have a quick look and then do some tests and maybe sharpen them up and see how well they operate. So these hand planes are the style that have this taper piece of timber that's supposed to knock in the front. Comes in from one side and wedges in there, except I'm having a little bit of trouble with this one actually fitting, so I think it's changed to my environment, so I'll have to resize that, but we can still trial the hand plane without that. I'm not sure. This one's sort of, you can see it sort of fits in. It's supposed to go in all the way, and it's supposed to allow you to sort of plane like that. Traditionally these were sort of used down low with their feet on the hand planes and stuff, and so that's why they had that ability to sort of sit back and push forward and make it a little easier to operate. They're a nicely made plane. They have a very basic wedge, which we'll have a look in a sec, and you can see both of them actually have this little sort of brass front to the mouth, so there's been quite a bit of attention to detail put into these for such cheap planes, and I didn't actually expect to see the brass sitting in there, but it's a very nice touch of a little inlay of brass. So you can see the design, it's a very basic sort of wedged system like this. The wedge doesn't go down quite as far as I was expecting, but it still grabs the top of the chip breaker just down in here, so there's no problems there. The wedge actually works quite well, although on this one it doesn't line up as well as it should, but it's still, as you can see just down in here, it overhangs the edge of the shoulder a little bit here, but it's still wedging properly. And if we look at this one, the wedge actually fits properly in this one, so I think this is something to do with the movement of this timber, because it's a very greasy timber, a very oily timber. I'm not sure exactly what it is, and I'm not sure if it's stained or not, so yeah. So let's get that bit all over there and give it a test. It's taking a shaving. And it's not jamming, so that's impressive to start with. So it's not taking a full shaving, because obviously this blade needs sharpening, but you know, that's doing alright. So what we'll do is I'll throw the, we'll jump on here and just set the other one up, and just have a quick go with that one, and then I'll get the sharpening gear out and we'll see what's going on with chip breakers and blades. So it sounds like it's taking a shaving, but if you can see here, it's just jamming. So this is the one that's jamming. I know that's very close, and this one was closer to the edge, but I can see in its adjustment it's actually moved, so that might be why this one wasn't jamming. So I'm just gonna look up against the light here, and I can see there's a little gap, so we're going to adjust that one. And this is the one that was getting completely jammed, and there's a little tiny gap on that. So what we'll do is I'll flatten the backs of these blades, give them a sharpen, and we'll make the chip breakers and see how well these operate after that. So let's start with the better one to start with, and we'll see how flat this is. You can see it's got big milling marks on the back, so we'll have to see how well that works. It feels like it's got a little bit of grease on it, so I'm just going to, before I put it on my stones so I don't leave grease on my stones, just going to give it a quick squirt with the lapping fluid, which is just car automotive window cleaner that I use to lubricate my stones, just so I don't leave any oil on my stones, because that's probably going to be a bad thing. we can see it's still coming along. It's still going to take a little bit longer to get that nice and flat because these mill marks on the back here are actually quite deep. So as long as we can get it clear along the edge of the cutting edge, I think we're fine. Now you can see there, hopefully there's still a few little fine scratches here, but I don't think that's going to be enough to cause any issues for this, so I'm going to stop there. I will come back and obviously flatten this again at some point, but I just want to move on to the next step because I don't want to take too long doing this. And we're still going to make the chip breaker. And I still need to look at the other plane blade as well, so what I might do is just quickly set up the Veritas honing jig for this. I generally use the Veritas honing jig if I've got a blade that's new to me, just to establish it. Normally I'll establish them at 30 degrees, so that's what I'm going to actually set this one to. It's likely set at 25, so what I'm going to do here is just sharpen it with a bit of a... it'll end up having a bit of a micro bevel because I don't want to remove more material than I have to, which is generally the way I like to roll. Don't need to make more work for yourself for no reason. Eventually with sharpening it'll get there, and this is probably a plane that I'm not going to use a whole lot, but if it works really well I might use it a whole lot. Ooh, looks like this blade might have been set to 30 degrees as it happens. If it seems like I'm a little all over the place, it's because I am. So we've got a burr there again. Let's take this out and give it a quick strop. Keeping it within that 5mm of the edge, and it's just raised, giving the perfect angle. You can see it's nice and flat along there, so I ran it on the wood a couple of times there. Sorry I didn't show you. You can see that it's all crinkling up, which means that that chip breaker definitely needs to be smoothed out for it to operate properly. It's too sharp, that square. It's being too sharp on the actual shaving, and it's causing it to crinkle and jam. So you can only really hand do this, and so I'm just matching the angle and just running with it. Just moving up and down a little bit just to round it across that top. And we can see we're already starting to smooth that out. So you can see it's a lot more rounded. It's still not quite there, so I'm just going to take that down to that sharp edge. So although I missed that little bit here, it's smoothed out. So we can see that's taken some nice shavings now. So at this point it's actually been a week since I started filming that first bit and had to stop due to the thunder. So what I ended up doing was just continuing work on the other hand plane, not the one that I actually showed you, this one. But I just wanted to bring you in here and just talk you through a few of the things that I actually did with this particular one. So I actually ended up doing a few things with this, including troubleshooting the wedge here, which doesn't fit 100%, but it's actually working now. It's still doing the job of holding it. So let me just release this. So you can see I actually use my chisel and just cut the corners off that because it was getting jammed as the shaving was coming over, because that was sitting here exposed on the ridge like that. I had to sort of chop them back so it sits sort of back here and doesn't have a bit overhanging this piece. Now let me grab a screwdriver. So this blade took a very long time. I tried to flatten it, and you can see here there's some really deep sort of grinder marks, and what I decided in the end was to go to the ruler trick, because it was taking too long to take this out and I would have had to take too much material off. So I went to the ruler trick to actually flatten it so I can make the chip breaker against it. But once I get back past this, when I'm using this plane, once I sharpen it back past here, I can just go back to flat again. But until then, I'll be using the ruler trick on this one. The chip breaker on this one prepared easier than in the other hand plane that I showed you, and it made it absolutely perfect first go. So there's absolutely no gap on here, but I had to prepare this chip breaker the same as we did with the other one and remove that sort of square ridge that was on the edge of it. But once I did that, it all worked pretty well. So obviously there's a few issues with these hand planes, but for the most part they do work and adjust fairly well. So one thing I wanted to do before we go ahead, and I'll show you the test shavings on this, I just wanted to go ahead and check, which we should have done before, is check how flat the bottom of this plane is. Off camera I was just doing a few shavings and I was finding that it wasn't squaring up right, so I suspect there's a little bit of an issue with how flat this is. So when you do these, you want to bring the blade up and just get that wedge back in there, holding the timber under any tension, but the blade is completely up out of the mouth. So I'm just going to the usual board. You can see I got a little bit of timber just stuck in here from when I did the other plane. So I'm just going to quickly remove a little bit of that. Ideally a vacuum would probably be best to get that out, but I don't actually have one out here. So to do this, I'm still going to put a pencil mark along here, just down the side. So I just want to see how flat it is, obviously. Let me hold that in place. Makes sense to hold it down with my hold fast. Forget the most important step. So this is just some really spent 240 grit sandpaper at this point, and we can see here it's lighter here, so it's lighter through that section and here, so it means that this side, which was the side that wasn't taking a shaving properly, is not down flat. So we've got to remove a bit of material, bring it down to this side and just flatten it out. So with these, I've found, at least with any of the wooden ones that I've done, that you really want to weigh in nice and heavy on the top. Make sure the whole thing engages. So you can even see here, just on the brass, how it's smoothed up to this point, which means this is still not flat because it hasn't engaged it, so that's a good indicator there. So we can see that it's looking nice and shiny across here, and there's none of the old wood there anymore, so I think we can now say that's nice and flat. So I just got to clear this out and then reset that blade. So I'll get this out of the way and we'll do that now. I'm getting close to the same shavings. It's still a little bit thick on this side here, so I'm just going to tap it across. That's a pretty good shaving. So I'd say that's working pretty well now. Let's just have a quick look at this again. And there I've got two similar shavings. I believe one was like $20 and the other one was like $18, something like that. And I will leave those links down below and try and find the cost and just put them on the screen. But all in all, yeah, they're fairly cheap, but they're definitely functional, and yeah, it seems to be hit and miss with the blades, whether you can flatten the back properly, and the chip breakers definitely need quite a bit of work to get them to that sharp point where they work. But to be honest, it's not too unusual for planes like this, even going back many years, where you would have to prepare them yourself. So I think all in all, especially for the cost, that these can be quite functional planes, especially if you're just using them to supplement a few other metal body planes. But on the whole, I actually don't think they're bad planes. And yes, I haven't actually used a rat's tail file in there to get these to fit at the moment, because in my experience and from what I've been doing testing these, trying to push them along whether I have these in or not, they work better being pulled, and they're really designed to be pulled, and you can see that in the shape of them. They just fit to the hand perfectly to be pulled towards you, and so I think I'm just going to use these completely as pull planes and not push them, and so I'm not really going to worry about fitting these too much, other than maybe for storing them on the wall. So there you have it, patrons and channel members. I hope you enjoy this little review slash setup of these inexpensive hand planes from Temu, and do let me know what you think down below. I think they're actually not bad, especially for their price, and really didn't take any more work to set up than, say, the brand new Stanley Bailey metal body plane. Yes, it takes a little bit more to adjust the blades in them, and I do have that video coming up later this week, as I mentioned, and so I will see you all in that video. Bye, and thanks for your support.